A very good morning to all of you. Welcome back to the channel. So let's start with today's analysis session for 17th of July 2023. So taking up all the important articles with the respective topics. So firstly, we see that government sets up new panel to review all the NSO data. So since we say that data is the new oil, so it replaces a committee which examined the economic data sets only. And the move, it follows sharp critiques of India's statistical machinery. So after this, the step has been taken by the government and new panel to advise the government regarding surveys, identify and plug the data gaps that exist. So basically हम यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हैं कि what are the challenges एंड उसके बाद गवर्नमेंट ने स्टेप लिया है टू फॉर्म ए न्यू पैनल सो दैट एनएसओ के डेटा को एक न्यू तरीके से फ्रॉम अ न्यू perspective will be able to understand things and basically have much more better understanding. So अब इसमें से एक और टॉपिक क्रॉप अप होता है दैट इज कि what are the challenges या फिर क्या concerns है when we talk about the India statistical machinery. So it's important for us to understand that as well. And जैसे राइट नाउ वी सी कि हाउ थिंग्स आर चेंजिंग बेसिकली हाउ वी कैन से कि डेटा इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट आप किसी भी स्फीयर की बात कर लो इन टर्म्स ऑफ गवर्नेंस सो हाउ दैट थिंग्स एंड जो हमारी स्टैटिस्टिकल मशीनरी है वो कैसे सेम पेज पे होनी इम्पोर्टेंट है देन ओनली वी कैन से कि वी कैन गो अहेड विद रैशनल डेटा एनालिसिस. So here revisiting the numbers of the new standing committee on the statistics, it has a broader mandate to review the framework and results of all the NSO surveys. So वो फिर से reanalysis किया जाएगा. So the panel replaces the standing committee on the economic statistics जो 2019 में बनाई गई थी. After we see that findings from last round of the household surveys on consumption, expenditure and employment, they were junked and citing that जो issue है that is regarding the data quality. So इसीलिए ये step लिया गया है. And obviously we can't compromise with the quality of the data क्योंकि फिर आगे की जो future course of action रहता है completely based on that data. So it's important to ensure that what is the quality of data that we are relying upon. So we can't compromise with that. So the terms of reference हैं that includes finalization of the survey results, better use of administrative data. And apart from the survey design improvements, we see that these new committees, they will identify क्या existing data gaps हैं, how we can basically fill those gaps and क्या strategies रहेंगी accordingly. So basically you're looking for a system overhaul. Moving forward to the next important topics. So India is going to push the G20 to raise MNC tax share. So ये एक दूसरा issue है that India would be taken up in the G20 summit. So we'll be pushing for a proposal to raise the share of the taxes of the multinational companies that they pay to the countries where they earn excess profits. So इस चीज पे पूरा डिस्कशन किया जाएगा and जो important terms, basic concepts हैं, keywords हैं, उनका meaning you need to be clear with that. Like we talk about the base erosion and profit shifting, so that is also somewhere related to this only. So a panel, it wants Kuno cheetahs to undergo medical review because we are seeing कि so far 5 cheetahs, they have died. So it's important to basically have a medical review right now कि where are we actually going wrong and जो बाकी surviving cheetahs है कैसे ensure करना कि they are able to sustain in the Indian climate and the atmosphere in the Kuno National Park. So following the deaths of 2 more cheetahs at the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh, over the past week, we see that expert advisory committee, it is overseeing the implementation of Project Cheetah. It has recommended that all animals, they undergo a thorough physical and medical review. So basically, इसमें होगा क्या कि it will involve the recalling even the animals which are released into the wild and investigating if the radio collars danglings from their necks, they were indirectly abating the infections or not. So trigger for the recall was the latest fatality that we lost one more cheetah recently. So जब हम बात करते हैं the situation of flood in Delhi, so some measures have been taken by the government. One of them is that providing rupees 10,000 for each affected family. River level, it may fall below the danger mark today, so that is the expectation. But इससे regarding, वैसे तो this is a repeated topic, हम इसके बारे में काफी बात कर चुके हैं कि ऐसी situation arise हुई तो उसके लिए हमारे पास प्रॉपर प्लान ऑफ एक्शन क्यों नहीं था. वी वर नॉट प्रिपेयर टू हैंडल दिस सिचुएशन. एंड राइट नाउ भी जो हम रिलीफ मेजर्स की बात कर रहे हैं तो वहां पे भी बहुत ज्यादा वी आर सीइंग कि अ लॉट ऑफ लैक्यूनीज आर देयर. एंड how we can ensure कि in future अगर ऐसा कुछ होता है, because obviously because of climate change we are seeing and we expect कि the frequency it can go up of these flood like situation, कहीं पे will be witnessing droughts. So कैसे future में will be ensuring कि properly we will be successfully able to handle this situation at the ground level. And then बहुत सारे nuances भी आ जाते हैं कि अगर जैसे दिल्ली में या फिर किसी भी स्टेट में ऑब्वियसली वी हैव द इम्पोर्टेंट कल्चरल एंड हेरिटेज साइट्स, उनको जो डैमेज होगा, हाउ फर्स्टली वी नीड टू इंश्योर कि वो हम उस डैमेज को प्रिवेंट कर सके. एंड अगर डैमेज होता भी है तो उसके रिस्टोरेशन के लिए क्या स्टेप्स लिए जाएंगे, सो उसके लिए एक डिफरेंट प्लान ऑफ एक्शन रहेगा. एंड अगर ऐसी सिचुएशन हमें कैपिटल में देखने को मिल रही है एंड वी आर नॉट एबल टू हैंडल इट प्रॉपरली, देन ऑब्वियसली इट रेजेस अ लॉट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस अबाउट अदर एरियाज एज वेल, नॉट जस्ट the capital city. अब एक और नुआंस यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है कि जो लोगों ने फ्लड में जो बेसिकली अपने ऑफिशियल डॉक्यूमेंट्स थे, they've lost that, so obviously they are very important. तो government is going to organize special camps for those जिन्होंने अपने documents basically they have lost their documents, and special camps they will be organized to facilitate the recovery of the essential documents. And we understand that children, they have lost their books and school uniforms also, so government it will work actively towards providing replacements for these losses also. So these are a few of the short-term relief measures. Now you can see उत्तराखंड में भी, हिमाचल प्रदेश में भी नो कि क्या सिचुएशन है. सो हिली एरियाज के लिए, हिली स्टेट्स के लिए एक डिफरेंट प्लान ऑफ एक्शन होना चाहिए. वहां पे हमें ज्यादा लैंडस्लाइड्स देखने को मिलती है, फ्लैश फ्लड्स देखने को मिलते हैं, तो उनको हम कैसे डील करेंगे, एक प्रॉपर प्लान ऑफ एक्शन वो भी होना चाहिए. क्या रोल रहेगा डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स का, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. So China even raises concern over India's only ape. So the Kulok gibbon, which is unique to Northeast, it is one of the 20 species of apes at high risk of extinction. So सबसे पहले तो यही important हो गया कि they are found in Northeast India. So you need to know about कि कौन से habitat में we get them. IUCN status high risk of extinction पे है. So conservation status of India's only ape, it was a cause of concern at the global event on gibbons, which was held a week ago in China. So the gibbons, they are the smallest and fastest of all the apes, and they live in the tropical and subtropical forests in the southeastern part of the Asia. And the Hulok gibbon, which is unique to India's northeast, it is one of the 20 species of gibbons on the earth. So ये हमें इंडिया में सिर्फ नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न स्टेट्स में मिलता है. एंड जब हम गिबन्स की बात करते हैं तो यहाँ पे यू कैन सी कि उनके हैबिटेट का पूरा मेंशन किया गया है. सो एस्टिमेटेड पॉपुलेशन ऑफ Hulok gibbons is around 12,000. एंड हमारे लिए ये एक क्वेश्चन है कि Hulok gibbons क्या हमें वर्ल्ड के किसी और पार्ट में भी मिलते हैं कि नहीं. So like all apes, they are extremely intelligent with distinct personalities and strong family bonds. So unfortunately, the current conservation status of the gibbon species, that is alarming. And all the 20 species, they are at high risk of extinction. So all 20 species are at this high risk of extinction. So since 1900, gibbon distribution and populations, it has declined dramatically with only small populations in the tropical rainforests. So grand confluence of the cultural sports, celebrating traditions, uniting generations. This is from the state of Chhattisgarh. So opening ceremony would be held on 17th. Coming to editorial page, so India's conglomerates, they are getting too big for comfort. So nothing, not even the Hindenburg research, it seems to stop the advance of Indian big business. So जब हम अडानी ग्रुप की बात करें तो it continues with its acquisitions जो as usual business है, it is going ahead with the expansion even if वो अगर slower pace पे भी हो रहा है initially, but it has been able to persuade financial markets also to lend it more money, notwithstanding the assessments that it is over dependent on the debt. सो चीजें नॉर्मली चल रही हैं, थोड़े बहुत वी कैन से शॉर्ट टर्म चैलेंजेस इमर्ज हुए हैं अडानी ग्रुप के लिए, बट एज सच कोई मेजर इम्पैक्ट हमें नहीं देखने को मिला है. सो रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज लिमिटेड, इट हैज अनाउंस्ड द डीमर्जर ऑफ इट्स फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज आर्म टू एस्टैब्लिश अ न्यू एंटिटी विद media speculation sees as a bid by the group to establish a dominant presence even in the financial services industry. So Reliance Industries is also expanding and trying to be a dominant player in the financial sector as well. So demerger, it is being seen as a repeat of the strategy जो group ने adopt करी थी in areas stretching from telecommunications and retail trade to media and entertainment businesses. And other जो business groups हैं उनका mention भी किया गया है. So this assessment, it is not true of all the businesses in India. Obviously, this can't be universally applicable for all the businesses, but it is not just that small or medium scale firms हैं, not to mention the large mass of the informal enterprises, they are not doing well and they are yet to recover their COVID-19 inflicted losses. So basically, जो major impact रहा on the businesses, that was on the MSME sector. एंड जब हम कंपैरिजन करते हैं जो बिग बिजनेसेस हैं, बिग बिजनेस ग्रुप्स हैं इंडिया में, उनके ऊपर इतना कोई इम्पैक्ट नहीं हुआ. उनके लिए बिजनेस एज यूजुअल चल रहा है, वो अपने एक्सपेंशन पे काम कर रहे हैं. एंड एमएसएमई पे जो इम्पैक्ट रहा कोविड-19 का, दे आर स्टिल रिकवरिंग आउट ऑफ इट. वो अभी भी मतलब they are not in the pre-COVID situation. So many established big businesses names, they do not share the good fortune of the big few. So former RBI deputy governor and his co-author report in a much-cited paper that the share of the assets in the non-financial sectors owned by the big five business groups, it has risen from 10% in 1991 to nearly 18% in 2021. और जब हम next 5 की बात करें, उनके शेयर की बात करें, तो it is fallen from 18 to less than 9%. So while their claim is कि increased concentration is contributing to inflation, it has been challenged. And the evidence that they provide of significantly increased concentration, it has not. So चीजें basically contradictory हो रही हैं. So they are on a progression to state capture. So dangers of such a rapid rise in the industrial concentration, it has been flagged in the past across the world as well. So concentration of businesses, obviously this is somewhere leading to monopoly kind of situation, concentration of power. So accordingly, जो economic dynamics हैं वो भी accordingly influence हो पाएंगे. So it's important that we maintain that decentralization and यहाँ पे we don't see too much of inequality. So it is important to ensure this going forward. So process, it feeds on itself by using market power to stifle the competition. Obviously, अगर आपके पास power होगी तो you will be able to misuse it also. So जैसे naturally things work out in economics, वो चीजें influence हो जाएंगी and things wouldn't be same as usual. So profit inflation एक चीज है, profiteering, that would be much more visible. Manipulation of cost and prices हो सकेगा. Obviously, this is not something what we desire for. So it triggers efforts to influence institutions of democracy, and through means such as the capture of the media, it dilutes the role that civil society can play as a countervailing power. So these are some of the fears that was strengthened by recognition that these tendencies, they are not stalled by competition in the market, but they are a consequence of functioning of the markets. जिस तरीके से markets function करती है उसका एक consequence है, and it is not because जो market में competition exist करता है. So given जो asset and income inequality है and it is widening with time, therefore the differential power among the economic agents functioning of the market favors for multiple reasons those जिनके पास asset बहुत ज्यादा है, leading to concentration and centralization. So that is the thing. So it is all basically you can see starting from जो asset and income inequality exist करती है जिसकी वजह से उनके पास थोड़ी और power आ जाती है in the hands of economic agents and accordingly market भी उन्हीं को favor करती है किसी न किसी तरीके से. So that leads to concentration and centralization of power. So that recognition, it led to the argument that it is not only necessary to regulate markets to address the malicious outcomes their functioning can give rise to, but that there is a need to physically prevent the growth of dominant businesses and excessively large conglomerates or even break up those that are seen as too big for comfort. So यहाँ पे हम बात कर रहे हैं कि not just markets को regulate करना important है, but जो physically expansion देखने को मिल रहा है जो डोमिनेंट बिजनेसेस है इंडिया में टॉप 5 है टॉप 6 है उसको रिस्ट्रिक्ट करना या उसको इंश्योर करना कि वो इस तरीके से ना एक्सपैंड करे वो भी इम्पोर्टेंट है. सो यहाँ पे आप कीवर्ड्स लेके आ सकते हो जैसे क्रोनी कैपिटलिज्म हो गया एंड ग्रीडफ्लेशन. हमने कुछ टाइम पहले एक आर्टिकल प्रॉपर आर्टिकल कवर किया था रिगार्डिंग ग्रीडफ्लेशन, वो भी कहीं ना कहीं इसी चीज से रिलेटेड है. एंड मनी फैक्टर की बात करें तो the refusal to reduce the influence of money in politics. So अच्छा यहाँ पे we are seeing कि 3 trends हैं जो signal करते हैं कि this narrowing of political distance between the state and the big businesses. So जो distance है basically we can say between the polity और politics and the businesses वो कहीं ना कहीं कम हो रहा है and 3 ऐसे trend है जिनसे हमें पता चलता है कि it is narrowing down. So first is the embrace of neoliberalism by the powerful voices within and outside the state. So this implied कि we adopted the view कि role of the state height is not to regulate private capital, but to facilitate कि it grows. So this is basically what do we actually mean by the philosophy of neoliberalism कि neoliberalism actually होता क्या है. So we saw कि neoliberalism specifically after the 1991 structural reforms we saw कि कैसे businesses private capital India में enter हुए and we started supporting them. So it advocates of neoliberalism. It has argued कि competition है that would be fostered by liberalized regime while counter concentration. So reverse it has happened and despite early signs in some sectors, competition increase हुआ है. So even in areas like telecommunications, civil aviation, initial increase जो था in the numbers of the new players, it has only triggered a process of churning with associated social waste that has finally left a few with signs of collusion among them. So मतलब initially when we saw the expansion in these sectors, उस time पे बहुत सारे players enter कर रहे थे. But again at the same time हमने ये देखा है specifically in the civil aviation sector in India कि इतने सारे players होने के बाद आज के time में we have only a handful of players which are successfully running the aviation industry in India. So उसकी वजह से कहीं ना कहीं we can say कि जो root cause रहा वो neoliberalism को support करना ही रहा. Second trend की वजह जो second trend है basically जिसकी वजह से we saw again जो पॉलिटी और बिजनेस के बीच में जो डिफरेंस है या जो डिस्टेंस है वो नैरो हुआ that is being suggested by the second trend कि that is saying कि propagation of the view कि state must help strengthen the domestic big business to not just hold its own against the giant global competitors but to step beyond the Indian shores as well. So state policy, diplomacy, public resources including those channeled through the public banks had to serve as instruments for the purpose. So while liberalization उसने Indian markets को open up किया, it subjected much of the Indian businesses to global competition. So state intervention, it was modified to protect and promote sections of the big businesses, not least through large scale subsidies and जो transfers उनको provide किए गए initially. So उसकी वजह से ही we can say आज के time में जो top 5 business houses है India में वो emerge हो सके. Third trend जो है that is the refusal to reduce influence of money in the politics. So कहीं ना कहीं ये दोनों चीजें साथ में चली, money in politics and in the event closeness of the political parties see to the big businesses, it has turned out to be a prerequisite for garnering the resources needed to manage elections and win the electoral support. So कहीं ना कहीं crony capitalism and उसके साथ उनका relation with the politics जो पैसा आता है and politics में use किया जाता है during elections, वो कहीं ना कहीं हमें लग रहा है या it is visible with the trend कि वो increase हुआ है with time. So policy, it has been changed to legitimize corporate donations to the political parties, जो obviously corporates के जो donations है वो एक major role play करते हैं, major chunk है जो political parties को जाता है. चाहे आप अब यहाँ electoral bonds की बात कर ले, यहाँ पे mention भी है. उसमें भी कुछ ऐसे लूप होल्स हैं जो मिसयूज किए जा सकते हैं बाय द कॉर्पोरेट्स एंड व्हेन इट कम्स टू donate making donations to the political parties. And कुछ changes भी किए गए in the electoral bond norms की उसको बेसिकली थोड़ा लेस स्ट्रिक्ट किया गया, जो अगेन पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को हेल्प करेगा कहीं ना कहीं. सो ये 3 ट्रेंड थे जो हमें बता रहे हैं कि डिस्टेंस बिटवीन पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज एंड कॉर्पोरेट बिजनेसेस विथ टाइम रिड्यूस हुआ है. सो ऑल इन ऑल हम यही समझ सकते हैं थ्रू दिस आर्टिकल कि जो बिग बिजनेसेस का एक्सपेंशन है, जो ग्रोइंग इनकम या एसेट इनइक्वालिटी है, उसको हमें कम करना है, उसको रेगुलेट करना इम्पोर्टेंट है. देन आज के टाइम में मार्केट रेगुलेशन की हम बात करते हैं, वो ठीक है, वो एक डिफरेंट अरीना है, बट जो बिजनेसेस का फिजिकली बिजनेसेस एक्सपैंड कर रहे हैं, जो डोमिनेंट बिजनेसेस हैं, उसको रेगुलेट करना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. अदरवाइज आने वाले टाइम में जो उनके पास पावर होगी वो ऑब्वियसली वो मिसयूज कर सकते हैं. एंड इट इज जस्ट वी कैन से कि मेन मोटिव जो है दैट इज टू मेक प्रॉफिट्स. सो दैट इज समथिंग विच कैन नॉट बी सपोर्टेड इन करंट टाइम्स जब हम क्लाइमेट चेंज के इम्पैक्ट से डील कर रहे हैं. सो थिंग्स नीड टू गो इन अ सस्टेनेबल मैनर एंड ऑब्वियसली इकोनॉमी पे भी वो डायरेक्ट इम्पैक्ट करेगा. जब हम डिसीजंस की बात करेंगे, जो इकोनॉमिक फोर्सेस है वो इंडिपेंडेंटली फंक्शन नहीं कर पाएंगे बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दिस. सो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि वी टेक स्टेप्स सो एज टू इंश्योर कि जो करंट ट्रेजेक्टरी है वो सिमिलर तरीके से सिमिलर फैशन में आगे विद टाइम एक्सपैंड ना हो. This article is talking about India's relationship with France. It is unique and multidimensional, so you can just go through it. This wouldn't be difficult to comprehend. Ukraine's counter-offensive and a reality check. So after months of speculation as to when and where Ukrainian counter-offensive against the Russian it would begin, Ukrainian presence has finally stated on 10 June that offensive had begun. It must be assumed कि जो lack of fanfare है attending this event, it was because the assault until then had not been truly successful. So यहाँ रशिया यूक्रेन की बात कर रहे हैं, how Ukraine and Russia they stack up basically. So Ukraine, it has assembled large quantities of North Atlantic Treaty Organization supplied weaponry. So NATO Ukraine को help कर रहा है in terms of weaponry, arms and ammunition. Great number of troops भी present है for the offensive and much of these are already committed in the battle. So losses होंगे दोनों sides पे होंगे. And after 6 weeks of fighting, it appears that bravado in the Western media about counteroffensive has diminished to a point where it is rarely discussed. But right now we see evidently it does not have air supremacy नहीं है यूक्रेन के पास against the Russian defenses that can facilitate advances on the ground. So obviously अगर आपके पास air supremacy नहीं है तो आप ground पे भी जो advances करने हैं या जो भी forces की movement है वो भी accordingly restricted ही रहेंगी. So revolt against Russian military commanders by the paramilitary mercenary Wagner group under their leader Prigozhin, which was a huge embarrassment for Kremlin. It has not delivered advantage anticipated by Ukraine on the front lines. So second major Ukrainian thrust, it seems to be in the Bakhmut region to negate the Russian gains of earlier months. So basically बात करें कैसी अभी recent developments हुई है in the context of this war. And apart from this, we see the truce, it seems distant. So right now, though, we are not seeing कि the war is going to end sooner. So Ukraine में we see where 9,000 civilians they are estimated killed. So यहाँ पे हमारे लिए जो जानना important है, that is firstly India का क्या stand है, India के लिए क्या benefits रहे out of this war, and how does India sees this entire situation basically. And geopolitically, then from the perspective of IR, you can understand कि कैसे geopolitically things have changed, how countries are, realigning with their partners, and that's there. And globally, भी क्या impact रहा है of this war. These are some of the things which must be known to us. So this is the whole case about Rahul Gandhi's conviction defamation case जो रहा है. Constitution of India under Article 19 Clause 2 had declared that defamation is one among the exceptions to the free speech. So जो reasonable restrictions की हम बात करते हैं, that is one of them. And criminal defamation में जो actual harm है inflicted or suffering caused is not a condition to constitute offense as intention or knowledge is sufficient. So पूरी details about this case. Apart from this, High Court was like deciding on an application to suspend the order of conviction against Mr. Gandhi. So court ultimately denied relief to the petitioner, relying on the principle that a stay of the conviction is not a rule, but it's an exception to be restored to in rare cases only. So rare cases में ही आप basically conviction पे stay लगा सकते हो. And इसके अलावा the comment by Mr. Gandhi was that why all thieves they have Modi surname, it is found penal under section 499 that makes defamatory an imputation concerning a company or an association or collection of persons as such. So it remains to be seen whether the apex code it would view people bearing the surname Modi as an identifiable or definite class in order to be called a group of persons or not. So कुछ चीजें हैं. इसके अलावा basically the topic of disqualification of the legislatures that becomes important. उससे related Supreme Court की क्या important judgments रही है, that is important. यहाँ पे earlier judgments on defamation ये clearly mention की गई हैं. You can just go through all of them. क्या Supreme Court का verdict रहा या High Court के verdict रहे over this thing. So in light of these जो भी precedents है, it would be interesting to see whether apex court it would view people bearing this surname as identified as a group of person or not. So IITs में आप gender parity की बात करें, women they are still in minority and efforts are on to achieve gender parity. So not just in IITs, आपको थोड़े broader scale पे सोचना पड़ेगा कि जब हम basically STEM की भी बात करते हैं, science, technology, engineering and medicine, so वहाँ पे भी we see कि there the proportion of the share of women or their participation that is increasing, and वहाँ पे India की performance compared to other countries is very nice. So that is one thing. So Supreme Court collegium's quiet transparency, it is driving change. So इसके ऊपर भी पूरा debate था पहले, that that was basically Supreme Court's collegium versus the union government. So union government चाहती है कि उनके भी representatives होने चाहिए. जब हम judges के appointment या transfers की बात करते हैं तो उसमें government का भी कुछ role होना चाहिए, government की say होनी चाहिए. But again, obviously Indian judiciary does not support that. And कहीं ना कहीं फिर हम ये भी बोल सकते हैं कि Indian judiciary की जो independence है, that could also come under threat because of that. या वो कहीं ना कहीं influence हो सकेगी, उसको हम compromise नहीं कर सकते हैं. And then NGAC, that can be talked about how government was trying to bring in that, but again Supreme Court in 2015 made completely nullified that, and they continued with the collegium system. So that's basically transparency is very important. Transparency unki integrity and accountability is very important. Unki independence and autonomy is very important when you're talking about this entire process of appointment of the judges. So Supreme Court collegium under the Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud has quietly and transparently streamlined the appointment process of the judges to the constitutional courts while adding a deft mix of merit and seniority in the judicial ranks through a selection procedure which involves meaningful discussion on the assessment of candidates and उनकी जो judicial acumen है. So ये कुछ bases हैं which are discussed in the collegium when we're talking about the appointment of judges. And यहाँ पे अब ये समझना important है कि meaningful discussion का क्या मतलब है, how can we interpret that. And obviously this is one thing जब हम बात करते हैं transparency की भी, कि जो discussions हैं या जो reason है of appointment of coming to that conclusion कि आप किसको as a judge appoint करोगे, so that is not made public. तो वो वहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं transparency can be improved as well, so that चीजें थोड़ी और clear हो जाए and people know people should know this. So that is one thing which is basically can be improved. So one constant tide of barbs from the government about the opacity of the collegium system, it has died off with the change of guard at the top in the law ministry. So जो पहले union law ministry थे, that was also, we can see कि बहुत ज़्यादा remarks आते थे from him regarding the opacity of the collegium system. So he was completely opposed to the system. And उसके बाद से we are seeing कि this topic has little subsided. So recommendations were made by the collegium for the judicial appointment. They are now notified within days by the government also. So पहले ये problem भी आ रही थी कि government जो recommendation Supreme Court का collegium government को forward करता है, तो government was not approving the names और government कोई action ही नहीं ले रही थी, तो government की तरफ से बहुत ज़्यादा delay देखने को मिल रहा था. So अब वैसे instances भी हमें नहीं देखने को मिल रहे हैं off late. So that is the thing. So according to center, lightning is not a natural disaster. So number of deaths due to lightning, it has been increasing of late, and this is again a cause of concern. So क्या actions, क्या लोगों में awareness generate करनी important है कि जब lightning strikes होती हैं तो आपको कौन से steps लेना important है. Basically आपको open में जाना, it is not safe, and staying at home is important. So ये awareness आप कैसे generate करोगे, क्योंकि बिल्कुल basic चीजें हैं जो लोगों को नहीं पता है, and that would be also very play an important role in saving lives of people. So if it joins the list of natural disasters, जो victims हैं, they will be entitled to compensation under the state disaster response fund. But official of center says that he or she is not in favor of it, as your deaths and they can be prevented through awareness programs. So same point is being reiterated over here कि awareness generation पे काम करना important है जब हम lightning disasters की बात करते हैं तो. And यहाँ पे ये समझना भी important है कि why the number of people dying because of lightning that is increasing. So ये कुछ चीजें हैं that becomes important. So we are having bilateral exercise in Ulaanbaatar. So India and Mongolian troops, they will take part in the 15th edition of the bilateral military exercise in Ulaanbaatar, and they'll be exchanging the best practices and developing interoperability. Apart from this, you can find out about the name. So this is called nomadic elephant. So this is an annual training exercise that is conducted alternatively in Mongolia and India. So nomadic elephant is between India and Mongolia. Coming to the world page. So let's see the important developments globally. So Putin says that Russia has sufficient stockpile of cluster bombs. So cluster bombs होते क्या हैं? पहले तो आपको ये find out करना है. And they've been long criticized by the humanitarian groups and some US allies because those used in the previous conflicts, they have had a high dude rate. So meaning that they often leave behind unexploded bomblets that can harm the civilians long after a battle has ended also. मतलब they don't explode. It's not important कि सारे explode करेंगे जो भी आप use करोगे, and उसकी वजह से जो ये बोला जा रहा है ड्यूड रेट कि जो एक्सप्लोड नहीं हुए हैं इन फ्यूचर जब वॉर एंड हो जाता है सिचुएशन बिकम नॉर्मल्स, सो अगर बाद में they explode, so obviously that would be a huge loss to the civilian population living in that area. So that is one of the concerns जो पहले witness किया गया है, and इसके अलावा आप find out करोगे कि cluster bombs actually होते क्या हैं. So Russian president warns Moscow reserves the right to take reciprocal action अगर Ukraine uses the controversial weapon, and he claims to have not used the munitions in the Ukraine war so far. तो अभी तक cluster bombs use नहीं किए गए हैं. So dangerous heat waves felt across globe as we see कि wildfires के जो incidences है, they are increasing. So prehistoric predictions of the historic heat hung over the swathes of Asia, Europe, and US. And Japan has also issued heat stroke alerts to tens of millions of people. इसके अलावा in Europe also we are seeing the temperatures rising up. So वहाँ पे people they are facing very difficult a kind of situation when it comes to adapting to such a climate. So wildfire के incidences are also increasing जिसकी वजह से ऐसी condition develop हो रही है. So root cause को address करना बहुत important है. Otherwise, since it is visible that they are going out of control somewhere or the other. So UK formally signs up to the Trans-Pacific Trading Bloc. So UK also becomes its member. So they have hailed what is said was its biggest trade deal since Brexit. So as it formally signed a treaty to join major Indo-Pacific bloc. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership in New Zealand, there was progressive agreement for this. So other members of it includes Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Brunei, all of these are there. Coming to Financial Express newspaper, so let's see what are the important topics here. So India, indispensable partner for supply chains, says Yellen. So supply chain, global supply chains की जो integration की बात करते हैं, उसमें India, it cannot be obviously ignored. And definitely this is also one of the India's ambitions to be a part of the global supply chains. So friendshoring, debt distress, MDB is the key G20 focus areas for the US. So multilateral development banks and जो globally एक नया challenge emerge हो रहा है, the debt distress, इनको address करना important है. So friendshoring, it's an important foundation for the global supply chain resilience in which India is an indispensable partner. And adding that the American companies, they are investing in manufacturing in India for exports to the US. So एक ये area है. इसके बाद apart from this, finance minister calls for wider data sharing. So Gift City की बात करते हैं. Gift IFSC is rapidly growing with healthy and increasing participation of the international domestic financial institutions, and it will have an important role in financial inclusion and resilience and sustaining cities of tomorrow. So smart cities की बात करते हैं. हमने कुछ टाइम पहले बात करी spun cities की. We need to take into account या अब हमें सोचना चाहिए about sponge cities जो flood-like situation है. How will be taking steps in ensuring कि जो वाटर है या फ्लड लाइक सिचुएशन क्रिएट हो जाती है, वाटर ग्राउंड में कैसे अब्सॉर्ब किया जा सकता है. सो इसलिए द टर्म लाइक स्पन सिटी इज बीइंग यूज्ड. सो दिस इज वन थिंग. एंड डेफिनेटली स्मार्ट सिटीज की भी बात करें तो फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, रेजिलेंस एक डिफरेंट डिमेंशन है जिस पे फोकस करना अगेन इम्पोर्टेंट है. सो स्मार्ट सिटी आपका क्या, व्हाट इज योर आइडिया ऑफ अ स्मार्ट सिटी? सो यू नीड टू बी क्लियर विद दैट. एंड जब हम गिफ्ट और आईएफएससी की बात करते हैं तो do you think कि जो enthusiasm था initially about gift, are we on the same track or not? कि is the plan, जो भी plan था, has it been successful or not? So क्या challenges आ रहे हैं वो आपको find out करना है. So focusing on research in the fisheries, so we should pay more attention towards research in animal husbandry and fisheries. So this will help in increasing their share in the overall farm GDP and also strengthen the rural economy. So non-farm sector is going to play very important role going forward. And more FTAs in the offing. So South American and African nations, they send the feelers. So Commerce Department to boost manpower and negotiating skills with the respective countries. So we are learning on the job. So officials, they hope कि जो experience gain किया है through these intense negotiations on the FTAs, they would be helping in building the capacity and India is eyeing FTAs as an efficient way to boost the foreign trade, and it's favorably inclined to several of these proposals. So, given जो current challenge है of the global demand slowdown, उस time पे कैसे FTAs help कर सकते हैं in boosting the exports? That is going to be something which needs to be looked into. And FTA being negotiated with the UK is the most complex one India has attempted. Apart from this, last year the Commerce and Industry Minister had released a report also on restructuring of the Department of Commerce as well. So आप थोड़ा सा इसके बारे में read कर सकते हैं. Then Russia eyes the pact with India in the quantum technology and semiconductors. So apart from the crude oil sector, and जब हम de-dollarization की बात करते हैं, वो एक different area हो गया, and now we are basically trying to collaborate even in semiconductors and quantum technology. So कुछ emerging areas हैं, not just restricted to India and Russia, but USA की भी बात करें, जब हम France की बात करें, so we are basically collaborating more or less on the same dimensions as well. Defense sector की बात करें, so these are some of the emerging areas. So banks, they are facing the competition from mutual funds जब हम capital mobilization की बात करते हैं. So people, it is being seen of late कि most of the people, they are attracted towards investing their money in mutual funds because of safer returns and comparatively high returns from, depositing their money in the banks. So यहाँ पे थोड़ा competition face करना पड़ रहा है banks को. So they are facing severe competition from mutual funds and mobilizing funds from the public, and growth in assets under the management of the mutual funds, it was higher at 12% during the quarter which recently ended in June, while banks, they reported a growth of only 6% in the deposits. Coming to Indian Express newspaper, so let's see the important topics. So this we've seen world page by cluster munitions, Russia, China to kick off air Navy drills in East Sea. So एक तो हम बोल सकते हैं जब हम बात कर रहे थे, I was like talking about different dimensions जब हम रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर की बात करते हैं. So one of the changes geopolitically जो हमें देखने को मिला है, that is growing closeness between Russia and China. And this headline makes it very clear that they are going ahead with the military drills in the East Sea. So जब हम drills की बात करते हैं तो कहीं ना कहीं ये देखा जाता है कि जो military drills की जाती है, यहाँ पे air and navy में बात की जा रही है in the East Sea. So that is kind of a preparation of, attacking. So in this area we see कि Taiwan Strait में जो growing tensions हैं, so next जो we can say war like situation create हो सकती है, this can be in this area. So you can see a picture of wildfire forests burning from Spain. 2,000 people have been rescued. इसकी वजह से even, not just air quality wise भी बहुत ज़्यादा impact हो रहा है. And obviously जो damage हो रहा है, homes and people, they are being moved out of their places. That's something which is like very clearly evident. Wildfire के जो incidences are, they are growing specifically in the Western world. So इसकी वजह से जो heat wave वाली situation भी create हो रही है. So that's another challenge. So Kurtha Bijulpura section of the rail line, which is linking India and Nepal, it finally begins the operations. So you can just remember the name key, this railway section related to which two countries. तो ये सारे टॉपिक्स हम ऑलरेडी अभी तक कवर कर चुके हैं. So Scorpion and combat jet engine deals, they're not yet done and missing from the final statement. So हम इंडिया फ्रांस negotiations की बात कर रहे हैं. So timelines and the confidential specifications हैं, they came in way of the finishing talks. So June sees the spike in households taking up NAREG's work, and poor monsoon is one of the reasons behind increase in demand of the MG-NREGA works. So 2/3 of rupees 60,000 crore NAREG's budget for this year already been exhausted. So this year union budget we saw कि जो amount allocate किया था for the MG-NREGA, that was reduced, and अभी तक we have already spent 2/3 of that amount of rupees 60,000 crores. So आगे कैसे basically the survival और जो भी wages हैं या जो भी required expenditure है, how will be meeting that is another thing. उसके अलावा what are the basic challenges when we talk about this scheme, क्या problems face करनी पड़ रही है लोगों को, and this thing that this is kind of taken as an indicator कि अगर demand is increasing in MNREGA, so what is the actual situation of creating job opportunities in other areas. So basically कहीं ना कहीं ये show करता है कि जो unemployment वाली situation है, that is becoming much more of concern, greater concern, because people are now shifting to MNREGA for work. So this is somewhere not posing a positive picture or a healthy picture about the employment sector. Coming to the editorial page, so the worst form of inequality is to try to make unequal things equal. So यहाँ पे equality और equal जो हम बात करते हैं कि how basically affirmative actions लिए जाते हैं, जो unequal sections हैं obviously दोनों के लिए फिर different measures लिए जाएंगे. तो जो unequal हैं उनको आप equally treat करते हो, तो this is somewhere worst kind of or worst form of inequality. अगर आप ये बोलो कि unequals को आप equally treat कर रहे हो, तो that is not equality, that is also inequality. So आपको इसको समझना है, and obviously these worldly wise they can be topics for essay also, so you can practice them. So French connection, यहाँ India France की relations की बात की जा रही है. They are taking long term bets on each other, seeking to shape a multipolar world. So definitely आज के टाइम में हम multilateralism की बात करते हैं, multipolar world की बात करते हैं, multilateral development banks की बात करते हैं. So that is there. So France, it has come to the informed conclusion that no global problem, it can be tackled meaningfully without India's participation. So that is, we can say, the growing importance of the role of India in the global polity, or dealing things at the global level. So India's role, it cannot be ignored at the global level. So this explains the extraordinary emphasis on bilateral cooperation in the fields of climate change की बात करें, energy security, biodiversity, laws, counter-terrorism efforts, all of which they figures prominently in the Horizon 2047 statement. This also illustrates France's determination to support India's candidature for even permanent membership of the UN Security Council. So aiming for equity, the RBI push for geographic diversity in the CSR spending poses a challenge. So CSR जो spending की हम बात करते हैं, तो वहाँ पे भी this is one ग्रोइंग ट्रेंड की कुछ ही एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे ज़्यादा CSR स्पेंडिंग की जाती है, बिकॉज we can believe कि it is much more easier for the companies to do that, for the MNCs to do that. So RBI is pushing for कि geographic diversity visible होनी चाहिए जब हम CSR spending की बात करते हैं. Not just geographic diversity, I would say जिस एरियाज में भी CSR स्पेंडिंग की जाती है वहां पे भी डाइवर्सिटी विजिबल होनी चाहिए. ये नहीं कि यू आर जस्ट स्पेंडिंग मोर ऑन एजुकेशन और हेल्थ केयर ओनली. सो बाकी सारे एरियाज भी कवर किए जाने चाहिए. So question is, how can companies they diversify their projects and funding into unfamiliar sectors and terrain? So इन areas में ये spending बहुत important role play कर सकती है, but again ये challenging task रहने वाला है for the companies. So companies if they do it with a good intention, so they can make a huge difference. So accessing the remote locations, identifying key need kya hai, local communities ki trusted implementation partners, these are few challenges. So grassroots non-profit organizations, they often lack means to showcase their impact on national platforms, resulting in a information gap with the funders. So बाकी एक बार पूरे article पे you can just scan it through, move forward. सो यहाँ पे एक न्यू डायमेंशन की बात की जा रही है कि यू नीड टू सेव द वाटर, एंड जो भी करंट फ्लड सिचुएशन वी आर सीइंग, सो अगर इस वाटर को, इस पानी को हम सेव कर लेते हैं, वी आर एबल टू सक्सेसफुली कंजर्व इट, तो जो ड्राउट्स वाली प्रॉब्लम है उसको हम मिटिगेट करने में कहीं ना कहीं हेल्प कर सकते हैं ये प्रोसेस. सो पॉलिसी फोकस इट शुड शिफ्ट फ्रॉम फ्लड कंट्रोल टू फ्लड मैनेजमेंट. अगेन जब हमने स्पन सिटीज की बात करी तो वहां पे भी वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट फ्लड मैनेजमेंट. कैसे आप ग्राउंड वाटर रिचार्ज इंश्योर करोगे, कैसे यू विल बी इंश्योरिंग कि जो ड्रेनेज सिस्टम है सिटीज का दैट इज प्रॉपरली फंक्शनिंग, इट इज क्लीन्ड पीरियोडिकली. एंड अगेन स्पन सिटीज का कंसेप्ट यहाँ पे भी आ जाता है. Coming to the explain section, so यहाँ पे data protection bill talking about debate over the definition of child and age of consent in this bill. So changing stance जब हम Justice B.N. Sri Krishna committee की बात करते हैं, so it was the committee which was set up by the center months before the Supreme Court landmark decision of upholding privacy as a fundamental right in 2018. So उससे पहले एक कमेटी बनाई गई थी. So report relied on the definitions of majority, that is 18 under the Contract Act, and it recommended कि individuals under 18 they are entities which seek parental consent. तो चाइल्ड की डेफिनेशन के ऊपर एक डिबेट चल रहा है, एंड एज ऑफ कंसेंट क्या होगी वो एक अदर टॉपिक ऑफ डिबेट है. Then we had the Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 ka. So Justice Sri Krishna Committee report, it served as a precursor to this bill, and usme bhi child was defined as the individual below the age of 18. Then Joint Committee of Parliament ka manna ye hai ki definition of children should be restricted to 13, 14, 16 years of age. Then we had the Digital Personal Protection Bill of 2022, but वी सी की मतलब बहुत सारे ड्राफ्ट हैं इस बिल के जो बनाए गए, बट अभी तक कोई भी लॉ में कन्वर्ट नहीं हो पाया अभी तक. So recently we are having one more draft, so let's see whether this is going to be the final draft or not. So इस बिल ने propose किया कि the children and the companies they will have to seek verifiable parental consent, and they define children as below 18 years of age. Then final change कुछ किए गए. So rules in other countries में क्या rules हैं, like we talk about EU's GDPR. So age of consent, it has been kept at 16 there, but it allows the member states to lower it to as much as 13 also. So वहाँ पे ये option available है. Then USA का Children Online Privacy Protection Act की बात करें तो they define children being under 13 years of age and parental consent चाहिए for them. So it also prohibits the entities from conditioning children's participation in activities by collection of more personal information. Then Australia की बात करें, so different countries का mention किया गया है. So India के लिए important है what definition will be adopting. More cash and less grain. So with stocks of rice and wheat, they are finally balanced amid the monsoon-linked production uncertainties. The scope for distributing and exporting surplus grains it has considerably reduced, and that is in stark contrast from 3 years ago. So exporting surplus of the grains, that is just so reduced, and distribution का जो scope है that is also diminished. So कहीं ना कहीं we can say कि जो production है या जो availability of surplus, that is also declined. So situation is almost the reverse today. Governments, they have money due to the resumption of the economic activity. जो हम GST की tax revenues की बात करें, that is increased by 21%. Then FCI के जो godowns हैं, they aren't exactly bursting at the seams. So government के पास पैसा है, but again इतना food grain का supply नहीं है, availability नहीं है, जो वो खरीद सके, and it can ensure कि pan India level पे we have the adequate amount of supply of the respective food grains. So depleted stocks, that is something which needs to be taken into account. Export conundrum भी हो रहा है, exports पे हमने ban कर दिया so that domestically जो supply है that remains adequate, and domestic inflation increase now. तो obviously first you need to take into account the domestic concerns. उसके बाद ही आप ensure करोगे कि आप जो surplus बच गया उसको आप export करो and you earn something out of it. This we have already taken up banks competition from mutual funds. So FPIs, they are just infusing a lot of money into the Indian capital market. And that is also one of the reasons why we are seeing bullish market of late. Auto exports, maybe we are seeing they are declining. They have declined by 28%. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining today's analysis session. I hope the things are much more clear. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and also hit the like button for the video.